be moving around from single finger, double finger, triple, and four fingers. I'll try and put all of them in a short amount of space. And you can see how they work with each other, how I change from one to the other. And of course, you've got rewind on your VCR, so you can always rewind it and watch it over and over and over again, and even still frame and check and see how I'm doing this. And try to understand how they work together, that you don't always use just one finger or just two or three or four. You use all of them in different ways. And as you see that, maybe get an idea of how this could apply to your playing and could maybe help you to understand how these different techniques work. You could use them in your playing and maybe help you out. So now on to the left hand. We didn't leave it out. It's very important, one other point I may want to add here before we begin. Sometimes I practice my left hand and my right hand separately. That way, sometimes when you're playing, one hand will cover up or hide the mistakes of the other hand. So sometimes I practice with just my right hand and sometimes just my left hand to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Because sometimes you can't hear when the other hand is doing its thing. They kind of get in each other's way sometimes as far as being able to tell who's making the mistake. So sometimes it's a good idea to do some exercises one hand at a time. It's just an idea you may want to try. It doesn't always work for all players, but it's been a help to me to isolate a problem, fix it, and then improve my playing from there. So anyway, now on to the left hand. All of the playing that you see me do up and down the neck and all around and whatever basically comes from just three patterns. And those three patterns are as follows. A half step and a whole step, which means one fret and two fret. There's a half step and a whole step. So that's a pattern there where you see these fingers like that. This one isn't used, it's just kind of in the way right now. The next pattern goes like this, which is a whole step and a half step. So that would sound like this. That pattern there, and the next pattern you got to stretch a little bit for this, but you can use that finger in the middle or that finger in the middle, but basically it's two whole steps. See how that works? So if I'm going to play a scale across the neck, let's say like this, only those three patterns are in use. There's the two whole steps, half step and a whole step, again, and then a whole step and a half step. So any combination of notes I do, a lot of notes just went by, but if you slow down your tape and rewind it, you notice that it was only those three patterns. And the good thing about that is, it's confusing sometimes as a lot of notes seem to be when you're watching a player play and he's doing things that you don't know about yet. If you know that it can be broken down piece by piece and you can understand it then, it would be much easier for you to learn about playing bass and about how the music is put together. So if you can practice those three patterns, you can exercise your hands so that they can do those three patterns, and then that music will come much smoother to you. So a good idea to practice basically is a scale. A major scale is the playing the note E. There's a little buzz on my bass. It's supposed to be like that on purpose, so it sounds a little ratty. So a major scale. See, now there's not all of the patterns, but two of them. You got half step, whole step, and half step. Now, a major scale is only 8 notes. So what I do when I'm playing a major scale, my hand is in this position, I play all the notes that are in that scale, and that includes these extra ones. So instead of... Now, in my hand in that position, that's playing three notes per string of an E major scale all the way across the neck. So when I do a scale, I try to do all the way across the neck rather than just the eight notes of the scale. So see what I mean? Still just those three patterns as you see there. So what you can do is you can exercise those three patterns where you just go back and forth. However you want to finger it with your right hand is however you want to do it. You can use the techniques I showed you or use your own. I do it in different combinations. We're all going down, then go up, then go across to another string possibly. Not music, it's just practicing. A lot of people they're practicing things into music and it sounds a little too much like you're just playing scales, but these are good to learn, so when you do play music, your fingers can do the things you need them to do. And you can practice the other patterns that way too. And the same with the third one, with the whole step and half step. Every combination you can think of, where you start from the bottom and go to the top, start from the top, go to the bottom, and then stagger it where you one note down, the next note down, and the next note like this. Easier to show you than explain it. And then reverse. That's what it sounds like faster. But always remember, it may be impressive and fun to play it fast, but it's a good idea to do it nice and slow and solid until you really know what you're doing. You really got it very solidly. Because having a lot of strength when you do these will show up later when you're playing. And as you're playing, sounds very smooth and fluid and very musical. It's a result of you taking your time, doing it slow, and making sure that it's strong and accurate. Now you probably notice the finger you probably have the most trouble with is your little pinky because it's the smallest and weakest. But there's a way to get it as strong as the other fingers and get it to be a very useful finger. For strength, many times you'll find that the strength that you need is as you press two fingers together like that. Now if you sit down with your bass right now, put your finger like on if that's a C note and a D note and just go back and forth between those two, you might find it's difficult to do and it's also painful. Well, that's good. That shows at least you're working the thing. So there's no reason why you can't stretch it out. Now if it's a little too much for you, you can do it just as one fret and go between the two like that. And you'll see how if you do that for a little while, you'll start to feel it. You'll feel it in here in your arm a little bit, and it'll start to feel tight to you. And that shows you how weak that muscle is. So now if you can strengthen that muscle up, your little finger can become very valuable to you. So what I do to strengthen it up is I do just that, simple as it is. Sometimes I'll anchor this finger on that note and just lift, push down and lift this on and on. So it would sound like this if you had the volume on. And then go across the neck like that. So you'll... See how that works? It doesn't matter much what the sound is, we're just exercising here. So you can try to go... Now, it's that simple exercise. Try that a few times and you'll notice that it's very difficult to do. I do it a lot, so I'm used to it. But that shows you what you can do with your fingers. If you keep practicing, you can get up to the point where you can play it very easy and very smoothly. So just try that a few times. You can do it anywhere on the neck. You can do it up high or down low. We're doing it here for the sake of the camera, so... Now that'll really help give that finger some strength. Now you might also want to stretch it out so you can get that double two-fret thing there. Now a lot of people, the stretching of their hand has more to do with where their elbow is, believe it or not, than where their hand is. Also, people sometimes worry that the neck is too wide for their hands, or that their hands are too small. Well, the guy who started me playing bass is a little short guy with little tiny hands, and he plays a big old 6-string bass with wide strings, and he doesn't have a problem at all. It's more how you move your arm around that you can get your hands. If I try to move my finger with my hand like this apart, it doesn't go apart that easily, but if I shift my arm around a little bit, it moves in there quite a bit easier. You see how that works? A lot of people back off from playing bass or back off from moving forward because they're afraid they can't do these monstrous stretches. It's really not a big part of it. You don't really need to know it as much as you need to know how to stay in time, play solidly with the drummer, and be a smooth player. So that's a very important point to know. So you can also, just as you can do the exercise across on the single fret like that, you can also do a double if you want. But it's very difficult. And you'll feel it in your hands right away. And again, it shows you how weak those muscles are. Begin to develop them, and it will go much smoother for you as you try to put these together. So we're going to roll some drum machine music and play along with it. And I'm going to do a B minor scale, which is... Now I'm going to play, just pretty much play that scale. Play it in time, but watch how I move around a little bit. I'm not going to just play it stiff and just do exactly the notes. I'll move around a little bit, I'll vary them a bit, I'll do a little bit different on the right hand to make it more musical than just a scale. Because to just play just a scale, it's pretty boring and non-musical. So I'll try to take just that B minor scale, and I'll try to stay on it. I may make a mistake, but I'll try and stay just on that B minor scale, play along with the drums, and you see how, and the B minor scale is just these. In this position, it's just these two patterns, so you'll know ahead of time, so you'll know what you're seeing. It'll be the whole step and a half step twice, and then two. So that's the scale I'll be using. Now I'll just try and stay just on those notes. Now I'll probably blow it and play a few other ones, but I'll try to stay just on those notes. We'll run some slow drums. I'll play along. You get to see how the scale works in there, and try to imagine that it's some kind of music or song, and see if this works for you. And then try playing along also yourself. So here we go. Now you notice as I'm playing, generally I don't just play a note and hold it. I'll move it around, move my hand around a little bit so that it vibrates, it does a vibrato, and sometimes a bendy note too, where you go. So bending the strings, whether it's just as vibrato or actually to bend from one note to another, is a very important thing, and it's a little bit different on bass than it is on other instruments because you need a lot more strength to actually move these big, heavy strings. Where on a guitar, they're very small and tiny. It's a lot easier to do it. Get a couple of fingers underneath the string to help move it around. Now on this Yamaha bass, I did a special thing where I cut some of the wood out from underneath these frets. It comes like that from the store. And the reason that is so I can get underneath it a little bit when I'm bending. Bending a note, get a little easier to get underneath it. Otherwise, you scrape against the wood. So I'm scraping against the wood there. It's only done on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets. It's only done halfway across, too, so you can just get that. It's a little easier to get those up there. So that's basically string bending. And vibrato as well is just a little bit of less of a string bend. When you don't have your hands on the neck and you need the vibrato, you can always do it by moving the neck around. A little bit. It helps you get a little bit of a more musical tone to an open string. A little trick you can use. Guitar players will steal it from you though, so guard it carefully. But basically, vibrato gives a little bit more musical characteristic to the notes you're playing, rather than just have a solid note, though sometimes those are very, very important. Especially when you're playing a melody on a bass, you might want to have a little bit of vibrato on it.